The gavel cracked against the hardwood. The sound still echoes in my head like a gunshot in a canyon. That morning, the courthouse smelled of old paper and coffee gone stale. I stood at the defense table, my palms damp against the cool varnish. Across the aisle, she sat, my wife, wearing a silk blouse I once bought for her birthday, a smirk curling on her lips like victory was already signed, sealed, and delivered. She had the air of someone who thought the world owed her. Legs crossed, eyes darting over her attorney's notes, not once did she glance at me. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, her message was loud: I won. The betrayal had already happened long before this courtroom dance. A cheap hotel room on the edge of town. A text I wasn't supposed to see. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for round 2. My hands had shaken so badly I almost dropped the phone. That memory is carved into me. The sound of her laughter drifting from the shower while I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at her phone screen, my chest caving in. I swallowed hard now, gripping the table as her lawyer began his opening remarks. He painted me as the villain. Cold, distant. A man who neglected his wife, who had forced her into the arms of another man. I clenched my jaw so tight it ached. But she nodded along like it was gospel. My name is Ethan. I am 32 years old, and the day my wife cheated was the day my marriage died. What she didn't know was that I'd already buried the body, and dug a grave for her revenge too. If you're watching this, drop a comment, hit like and subscribe, because what I'm about to share isn't just about heartbreak. It's about strategy, betrayal, and a divorce that turned into the sharpest revenge I've ever pulled off. The months before court had been a blur of discovery. I wasn't just the hurt husband. I became the tactician. I'd hired an attorney who was more wolf than man, someone who taught me patience was sharper than anger. Together, we rewrote the script she thought she owned. At first, I felt like I was losing my mind. I'd pace the apartment at night, replaying every memory of us. Her kissing me at the county fair when we were 22, fireworks exploding in the sky, her hands tangled in mine. Then the darker reel, her slipping out late, claiming girls' night, perfume too strong, eyes too restless. I remembered once waking up at 2 a.m., her side of the bed empty, her phone buzzing with a man's name I didn't know. My heart had pounded so violently it felt like I might drop dead right there. But I didn't die. I evolved. Her family thought they'd corner me. Her mother, a realtor with a silver tongue, had whispered poison into everyone's ears. Ethan was never good enough for her. He'll cave. He's soft. Her brother, a wannabe businessman drowning in failed startups, kept dropping hints at family dinners that I should just sign and walk away. Hypocrites, every one of them. They smiled while sharpening their knives. The only one who stayed loyal was my younger sister, Claire. She lived 3 states away but called me every night. Don't let them write your story, Ethan, she'd say, her voice steady even when mine cracked. You're stronger than you think. Without her, I might have broken. But with her, I sharpened. Back in the courtroom, her lawyer droned on, trying to paint her as some fragile victim. The judge's face gave nothing away, but I could feel the air shifting. My own attorney leaned toward me, whispering, "Patience. Let him dig the hole." And dig he did. Because beneath the legal jargon, beneath the fake tears she dabbed with a tissue, there was a clause she had no idea existed. A clause she never thought I'd slip in. See, when we married, I brought assets into the relationship, inheritance from my late father. Stocks. A trust fund she thought she had her clause in. She was wrong. My lawyer had carved iron walls around it, walls she'd never scale. And in those divorce papers, there was a single line, so ordinary it almost disappeared: all claims to the Ward family trust are hereby waived, irrevocably. She signed it without a second glance. She was too busy fantasizing about my downfall. The moment her attorney sat down, mine rose. He spoke clean, sharp, like a blade slicing silk. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He simply unfolded the truth. Her infidelity, her financial manipulations, the prenup she pretended never existed, and finally, that clause. The one she had signed herself into. Her face, once smug, shifted. First confusion. Then realization. Then panic. Her eyes darted to her lawyer. His pale face said it all. He hadn't caught it either. I sat there, silent, as her entire strategy crumbled in real time. The courtroom felt like a theater, and I was watching the third act unfold. She had believed she was the director, but the spotlight was never hers to hold. It was mine. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself the smallest smile. Because this wasn't just about the affair. It wasn't just about betrayal. It was about reclaiming control. She thought she could rewrite me as the villain. But villains don't win in court. Wolves do. The judge cleared his throat, shuffling papers. "We'll reconvene tomorrow for testimony," he announced, dismissing the court. I stood, my legs steady for the first time in weeks. She shot me a look, half fury, half fear. A silent scream behind her eyes. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Because she knew now. This wasn't her story anymore. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. The city outside buzzed with Friday night life, laughter echoing from the street. I poured a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the lamplight. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt calm. But revenge, real revenge, doesn't end with one day in court. It was only the beginning. And as I set the glass down, staring at the skyline, I whispered to myself the truth she'd never escape. She started this. I'll finish it. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The city was still asleep, but my mind was already racing. The courtroom battle had just begun, and though yesterday was a victory, today would test my resolve. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, dark circles under my eyes, jawline tight, lips pressed into a thin line. I didn't see weakness anymore. I saw a man who had already survived hell. I dressed slowly, pulling on a navy suit that once belonged to my father. He wore it to business meetings, to every important occasion where he had to show strength without saying a word. Slipping into it now felt like armor. I could almost hear his voice. "Ward men don't fold. We endure." When I arrived at the courthouse, the hallway buzzed with murmurs. Reporters weren't there. It wasn't that kind of case, but the tension was electric. Family members from both sides had shown up, eyes watching like vultures waiting to see who would fall first. Her mother spotted me first. She stood near the water fountain, pearls around her neck glinting under the fluorescent lights. "You'll regret this," she hissed as I passed. "You should have just walked away quietly." I stopped, turned to her, and said calmly, "I stopped listening to you the day you told her to lie about that miscarriage." Her face blanched. She hadn't expected me to bring that up. But I remembered every word, every whisper, every manipulation. Inside the courtroom, she sat with her arms crossed, avoiding my eyes this time. That told me everything. She wasn't so sure anymore. Her lawyer shuffled papers, pretending confidence he didn't have. When the judge called the case back into session, my attorney stood and began presenting evidence. Not just of her infidelity, but of her spending habits, credit card statements dripping with weekend getaways, luxury items bought in cash, transfers to an account that wasn't ours. I remembered the first time I caught a hint of it. She had told me she was visiting her friend in Chicago. But one morning, while making coffee, I found a receipt tucked into her coat pocket. 2 plane tickets. Miami. A resort I'd never been to. My stomach had twisted into knots as I stared at the paper, the date perfectly aligned with her girls' trip. Those memories weren't just scars, they were evidence now. As my lawyer laid everything bare, I could see her facade cracking. She dabbed at her eyes, not from sadness but from sheer panic. Her brother, sitting behind her, leaned forward as though he might whisper advice. But the judge shot him a look that froze him in place. Testimony began. She was called to the stand first. Her voice trembled at the edges, but she tried to cling to the narrative of being the abandoned wife. He was cold, distant. I felt invisible, she repeated like a rehearsed script. Then my attorney approached, holding the hotel receipt. "Mrs. Ward," he said evenly, "on the night you claimed your husband was working late, isn't it true you were checked into the Marriott with another man?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. That's not how it looks." "Please explain how it looks, then." The silence was deafening. Even the shuffling of papers ceased. She stared down at her hands, her act dissolving under the weight of truth. I sat there, silent, every nerve in my body alive. When it was my turn to testify, I rose, walked to the stand, and swore in. My palms were damp again, but my voice came out steady. I told the truth, not the embellished, lawyer-crafted truth, but the raw one. I spoke of the night I found her phone on the bed, the text message still glowing on the screen. I described the smell of her perfume when she walked out late at night. I even recounted the night I drove past that hotel on a gut instinct and saw her car parked outside. The pain returned in every detail, but I refused to let my voice break. The courtroom was silent as I finished. During recess, I stepped outside into the cold air. Claire called me, her voice soft but firm. "You're holding strong," she said. "She can't touch you now." I leaned against the stone wall, eyes closed. "It still feels like she's winning, Claire. Like no matter what happens, I lost the moment she betrayed me." "Maybe you lost her," Claire replied, "but you didn't lose yourself. And by the end of this, she'll know it." Her words sat heavy in my chest, but they fueled me. When we reconvened, the judge's tone had shifted. He wasn't buying her narrative anymore. He pressed her lawyer on why she hadn't disclosed certain accounts, why evidence contradicted her testimony. Her smirk was gone. Her confidence bled out like water through cracked stone. And then came the moment I'll never forget. The judge turned to her. "Mrs. Ward, you signed these documents voluntarily, correct?" She nodded faintly. "And you understood the clause waiving all claims to the Ward family trust?" Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I didn't see that." "That doesn't change the fact that you signed it," the judge replied sternly. Her eyes darted toward me then, wide, desperate, almost pleading. For the first time, she realized the game was over. After court adjourned for the day, I walked past her in the hallway. She stopped me, her voice a whisper meant only for me. "How could you do this to me?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "You did this to yourself." I didn't wait for her reply. I just walked away, each step heavier than the last, but steady. That night, I sat in my apartment again, staring at the skyline. The whiskey glass was untouched this time. My thoughts raced, not just about her, but about everything I had lost. The home we built together. The dreams. All burned to ash. But somewhere beneath the wreckage, something else was stirring. Not hope. Not yet. But clarity. Because tomorrow, the verdict would be closer. And tomorrow, she'd learn that revenge wasn't a loud storm. It was a quiet earthquake. The final day of trial arrived wrapped in gray skies. Rain streaked the courthouse windows like nature itself was washing away the lies that had filled these walls. I walked in with steady steps, heart thudding but controlled, the way a soldier must feel marching toward a battlefield he already knows he'll win. She was already there. Her makeup was heavier today, but no amount of foundation could hide the dark shadows under her eyes. She hadn't slept. I knew because I hadn't either. But my sleeplessness came from anticipation. Hers from dread. Her family sat behind her like silent statues. Her mother clutched her pearls so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her brother wouldn't even meet my eyes anymore. They all knew the tide had shifted. The empire they thought they had built on her lies was collapsing. The judge called us to order. My attorney gave a closing argument sharp as glass. Simple, factual, devastating. This case is not about a man abandoning his wife. It's about a woman who betrayed her vows, misled her family, and attempted to strip assets that never belonged to her. The truth is clear. Justice is simple. Her lawyer's closing felt desperate, thin, like a rope fraying strand by strand. He tried to argue emotional neglect, tried to make me the cold husband. But the evidence was stacked too high against them. The receipts, the bank transfers, the lies unraveling one after another. And then the judge spoke. His words came slow, deliberate. Having reviewed the evidence and testimony, it is the court's decision to grant Mr. Ward's sole rights to the Ward Family Trust. Furthermore, Mrs. Ward is found in breach of marital fidelity. The petition for spousal support is denied. The room went silent. My pulse roared in my ears. She gasped audibly, the sound cutting through the air like glass shattering on tile. Tears welled, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She mouthed something I couldn't hear, maybe, please, maybe, why. It didn't matter, because it was over. As the gavel struck, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't realized was crushing me. For months I'd carried the burden of betrayal, humiliation, and rage. And in one sentence from a judge, I was free. She stormed out of the courtroom, her heels clicking like gunshots against the marble floor. Her mother trailed behind, her perfect poise cracked into jagged pieces. Her brother stayed seated, eyes glued to the ground, too ashamed to move. I didn't chase her. I didn't gloat. I simply sat for a moment, letting the victory settle. Revenge didn't need screaming. It didn't need chaos. Revenge looked like silence after the storm, like knowing the ground under her feet would never feel steady again. Walking out of the courthouse, I inhaled deeply. The rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, sharp, alive. Claire was waiting for me by the steps. She ran to me, hugging me tight, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "You did it, Ethan. You made it through." I hugged her back, my throat tightening. I didn't just make it through. I ended it on my terms. We stood there in silence, siblings against the world, until the courthouse doors clattered open and I saw her again. She didn't look at me this time. She kept her head down, rushing past, muttering into her phone. I caught fragments, words like ruined, nothing left, can't believe it. For a second I almost felt pity. Almost. But then I remembered the nights she lied, the texts she sent, the way she smirked at me across the courtroom as if I was nothing. She made her bed. That evening, I went home to the apartment that had once felt like a prison cell. Now it felt different, still quiet, still lonely, but no longer suffocating. I poured another glass of whiskey, sat by the window, and let the city lights flicker against the glass. Memories drifted in uninvited. Her laugh the first night we moved into our old house. The way she looked when she told me she wanted children, someday. The promises, the dreams. All of it now a ghost. But then newer memories surfaced. The text on her phone, the receipt in her pocket, the hotel parking lot. Those wounds hardened me. And those wounds led me here, stronger, sharper, untouchable. In the weeks that followed, the dust settled. Friends chose sides, some fading away quietly, others reaching out to apologize for ever doubting me. My sister never left my side. And slowly I began to breathe easier. One night, I ran into her brother at a bar downtown. He looked worn out, his failed ventures finally catching up with him. He tried to avoid me, but I walked over, handed him a drink, and said, "You were wrong about me." He didn't argue. He just nodded, shame heavy in his eyes. That was enough. Her mother never spoke to me again. I heard through whispers she had to sell off one of her properties to cover my ex-wife's legal fees. Justice has a way of echoing beyond the courtroom. And her? I didn't hear much. Only that she moved out of state, tried to rebuild, but carried the shadow of that verdict wherever she went. People don't forget. She'll live her life knowing she tried to destroy me, and failed. Weeks later, I found myself standing at my father's gravesite. The autumn wind carried the smell of fallen leaves. I placed my hand on the cool stone and whispered, "You were right, Dad. Ward men don't fold. We endure." I stood there a long time, letting the silence seep into me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living again. To anyone who hears this story, betrayal cuts deep. It rips the ground from beneath you, leaves you gasping for air. But if you hold steady, if you refuse to break, you can turn that pain into power. She thought she had written my ending. But what she didn't know is that endings are just beginnings in disguise. Have you ever faced betrayal? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Because in the end, I learned something priceless. Revenge is best served silent.